Hi guys, Nick Jennison from Guitar Interactive. Today, we're taking a look at the FEB-F2M medium scale acoustic bass from our friends at Aria. Now you guys know that I'm a huge fan of Aria's output. I think they make fabulous guitars and basses for comparatively very little money. This instrument is no exception, but what I will say is that acoustic basses are a little segment of the guitar market that is often overlooked, because when I was growing up, acoustic basses, especially more affordable acoustic basses, tended to be horrendous clack machines where you'd play them and they wouldn't really produce much low end. They'd just sort of go clack, 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 and they were generally awful. This is 100% not the case with this instrument. It's a really nice sounding bass that's also really easy to play thanks to its 32-inch medium scale. So it's not quite that 30-inch EB short scale sound, but it's also not a full P bass or J bass style 34. Sits somewhere in between the two, which gives it a nice mid-range warmth, but still has plenty of projection in the low end and a little bit of high-end extension as well. Now in the intro, you heard us playing this bass plugged in through the included preamp, which features a 4-band EQ and a built-in tuner. We're going to get rid of that preamp for a second and we're going to take a listen to the sound of this bass played through our microphone, which is an AKG 414. Let's take a listen to that and then we'll come back, we'll talk more about the spec. So now that we've had a chance to take a listen to this bass played both unplugged and plugged in, let's talk more about the spec, starting as we are always wanted to do at the headstock. So starting at the headstock, we have a really elegant Aria logo on this small headstock shape. That is my hand for scale there. It's 2 aside tuners, which is evocative of short scale basses of old. Very cool, nice touch. I think that 4 in a line thing almost looks a bit weird on acoustic basses. This looks really nice. It kind of fits that acoustic vibe very much. The headstock is a really nice shape. I'd actually like to see this on some of Aria's electric guitars, especially with this logo and this little design right here. Very, very attractive. It's finished in black satin and it's a NATO neck, which is kind of a species of mahogany. We're going to flip that over to show you how that looks on the back. So once again, we've got a good look at the back of the neck. We can see the back of the tuners. There's nothing fancy going on here, just really good old school functional tuners. Feels really nice, and that satin finish is very tactile to play. If we take a look at the neck for a second, the neck is slim, feels very, very comfortable. Once again, it's NATO in this open pore satin finish. It kind of adds to that kind of like, I guess the rustic feel that you sometimes get from an open pore finish, adds to the acoustic bass vibe. I really like it. Very, very comfortable to play, especially for me with my spoiled guitar player fingers. Now, if we flip it back over, we can take a look at the fretboard. The fretboard is rosewood, but it blends in very nicely with the black finished NATO. In fact, it's actually very hard to see the join between the two, but it's a rosewood fretboard, medium fret size, and your standard kind of, I would call it like a J bass string spacing. So it's not this big wide P bass neck. It's a little narrower, a bit closer to a J, perhaps maybe not quite as slim as some older Js, but it's definitely in that ballpark. So don't expect to have to make big stretches to transition from string to string. This is also going to make chord playing a little bit easier too, as we'll explore in a little bit. Now let's turn our attention to the body. The neck joins at the 15th fret, which is unusual. We normally see 14th fret neck joins, and there is this big inviting cutaway up here, which is not only aesthetically pleasing, but also invites you to get right up into the dusty end. We have 21 frets to play with. So if you're a soloist type, you can definitely get up here and wreak some havoc, but also it actually sounds and plays really well in the upper reaches too. And this is not something that can be said for a lot of acoustic basses. We often find, especially more affordable acoustic basses, have actions that you could drive a truck under. That's not the case here. I'll just flip it this way and see if I can show you. That action is very low straight out of the factory. It's not so low that it rattles. Still have to put a little bit of work in to play it, but it's definitely not unplayable by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it lends itself very well to chord playing and even to solo lines. Now, the body is quite deep. It's a big, all hollow body design with F-holes rather than the traditional sound hole that you find on some acoustic basses. I think this is a good choice because we get more top to project the sound. Now, you might think about the top and an acoustic instrument as being a little bit like the speaker cone in a speaker. This is what actually drives the sound. So the F-hole design rather than the sound hole design just gives us a bit more top wood to work with, and it also looks very elegant and is somewhat evocative of an upright bass. Now again, an acoustic bass is never going to sound like an upright bass in terms of room-filling projection, but this does a really good job. It has a lot of low end, a lot of low mid presence, especially for an instrument this size. It's fairly sizable. It's not absolutely massive, so you're not going to be playing it from a great distance like this. It's comfortable to play with fingers and with a pick, which we'll explore in a second, but it has enough body mass to project. Now, in terms of the woods, we have flamed NATO on the top and the back and the sides, which is very attractive in this black finish. If I turn it just this way and that, you can see not just the open grain, but also those little hints of flame that I think are very, very elegant. It makes this look like a really classy instrument. Real big fan of that. We also have a rosewood bridge down here with these 4 bridge pins. Big, substantial bridge pins we've got going on here too. Excuse me, I'm just going to clatter this with my jewelry. Hopefully we won't put too many marks in it. We can also show you the preamp on here as well. Now this preamp has a volume control in the center. We have a notch control for feedback rejection, but also for notching out any unpleasant mid-range frequencies. Not that there really are any. It's a very natural sound plugged in with nothing done to it. But we also have a tuner, which is very bright and very, very accurate. I used this to tune before we started playing. It's held its tune very well. And we have a 4-band EQ with low, middle, high, and presence for further tailoring your tone. And while we're here, we'll just zoom out a little bit and I'm going to show you the back of the guitar where we can really start to see that flame in action. Now, if I turn it this way and that again, this is not flamed maple, this is flamed NATO, which is a mahogany type species. So it has that mahogany mid-range on the go, and you can see a little bit of that bare NATO on the binding. It's a scraped binding style, so you can see what it looks like without the paint, but it's a really attractive finish. I think it looks very classy. It's also available in sort of a honey kind of color as well, but I really like this black. I think it's a really nice choice. Again, looks very rustic, very, I guess, very wood-y, if that makes sense, which is born out in the tone and the aesthetics. If you're playing an acoustic bass, I feel like leaning into that kind of like, I keep saying rustic, but that rustic kind of vibe, I think that's kind of important. And again, it's definitely something that has drawn me to this instrument in particular. So let's take a listen to some more tones before we go any further. Now we're going to stick with the mic'd up sound for a second. You heard me playing some fingerstyle through our mic a little while ago. Let's go back to the mic'd sound, but this time we're going to use a plectrum, fairly heavy pick. I'm going to play fairly close to the bridge. What you'll notice here is a big difference in projection. It's my opinion, at least, that I'm not really a purist in terms of fingers or picks when it comes to electric basses, but I feel like on an acoustic bass, they really shine with pick playing because you get a little bit more volume, a bit more clarity on the front of the note, and a bit more projection. So let's take a listen to that, and then we'll do another plugged in example. Now, another benefit of the F-hole style top design as opposed to the traditional sound hole design is that not only do we get more projection when we dig in with a heavy pick, but we also get better feedback rejection. Now, this enables us to use effects like compression, reverb, delay, modulation, and even distortion in the live domain. So let's throw on a compressor and some ambient plate reverb, and we'll try some single note and chord lines that might be representative of a solo bass piece. Now, hands up, disclaimer here, I am a guitar player, I'm not a bass player, and I'm absolutely an amateur when it comes to this sort of thing, but I do like to dabble in this sort of solo bass playing, and hopefully it'll give you an idea of what this might sound like if that's your bag. So do bear with me, I'm going to try my best, but let's take a listen to that now. So there you go, guys. That's been a look at the Aria FEB-F2M acoustic bass. It's a medium scale instrument, looks very elegant, sounds great plugged in, has a surprising amount of projection unplugged, especially played with the plectrum. This is very much not the affordable acoustic bass of old, which we discussed earlier. They were horrible. When you know what we're talking about, back in the day, they all sucked unless you paid loads of money for one. This is not the case. I'm really pleased to see this cool little corner of the market, these acoustic basses at the entry level like this one. Again, you know, this is a very affordable instrument, but Aria do affordable instruments really, really well. So, you know, I'd expect no less. Really pleased to see this little corner of the instrument market finally catching up with the standards of, say, Aria's electric guitars. So very, very cool bass. I would not hesitate to add one of these to my collection if I was a bass player. But again, I'm a guitar player, so you can be the judge. But I think the sound examples speak for themselves. Once again, this is the FEB-F2M medium scale acoustic bass from our friends at Aria. My name is Nick Jennison with Guitar Interactive. I'll see you next time.